Man who grew up in one of the poorest neighborhoods in America, getting into a romantic relationship with a woman who's a member of one of the richest families in the world is something out of a movie. But that's exactly what happened when Jay Electronica had Kate Rothschild cheating on her husband with him. This is a topic that can go on for hours, but the short summary is that the Rothschilds are a Jewish banking family that go back almost 500 years. They would establish an international banking family throughout Europe after beginning in Germany, and then later throughout the world, eventually becoming the richest family in the world in the 19th century, which led to them being in the crosshairs of many conspiracy theories of the modern day that have to do with war, finance, politics, and many have deemed them as the or part of the Illuminati. There are many falsehoods perpetuated about this family, but one thing that even an author who was considering writing a book dispelling all the myths about the family noticed and said is, it was relatively easy to spot the lies, but it proved impossible to find out the truth. They don't want anybody to know about them or how much money they have. The family preserved their secrecy and power, usually by arranged marriage with first or second cousins for hundreds of years, but eventually began to marry outside the family, but only to aristocrats or other rich families. Jay Electronica is a rapper who was born and raised in the projects of New Orleans, Louisiana, one of the roughest areas in America, but eventually came to fame and success in 2007 when he released Act 1 Eternal Sunshine on MySpace, which was a 15-minute song where he rapped over the instrumental from the 2004 film Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, with no drums added, and he had rap fans mesmerized by his flow, bars, wordplay, and overall how smooth and effortless his rapping was. Jay Electronica would eventually start working with producer Just Blaze, where they would release another Jay Electronica classic archive, the songs Exhibit A and Exhibit C in 2009, with him eventually signing to Jay-Z's Rock Nation in 2010, and a heavily anticipated debut album of Act 2 was awaited. Kate Rothschild, who from her mother's side of the family is related to the Guinness Brewery family, and from her father, banker's side, inherited 18 million British pounds after his passing, decided to venture into the music industry in 2010 and create her own indie record label called Round Table Records. She had been married to Ben Goldsmith since 2003, who inherited a 300 million pound fortune from his billionaire father, Sir Jimmy Goldsmith, who was the inspiration for the character Sir Lawrence Wildman in the 1987 film Wall Street. Kate would meet Jay Electronica through her ventures in the music industry. It's a little bit eerie how, we don't know the exact details, not through her record label, which didn't release more than a couple of songs with small bands that never really went anywhere, but at some point in October of 2011, she got close to Rock Nation and Jay Electronica, who she would start managing, and even bringing him around her children and husband at the time. There's a photo of Jay Electronica and her husband, Ben Goldsmith, hunting together. Jay Electronica was relatively cool with them. Last October he visited London and wrote on Twitter afterwards a message to Kate, among others, for having opened my mind in ways it hadn't been for years, in just 2 weeks. I love you. The following month he addressed a message on the social networking service to Mrs. Goldsmith, her brother James, and Mr. Goldsmith's siblings Zach and Jemima. He has described Mrs. Goldsmith as one of his direct points of contact for press and business inquiries, and gave her personal email address, while last month he posted a photo of her sitting in a helicopter. The rapper also praised her husband's film, writing on Twitter, "Fire in Babylon was amazing. Job well done." To which Mr. Goldsmith replied, "So happy you loved it, Jay." Her new venture into the music industry began to put some distance between her and her husband and family, since she was constantly traveling to Los Angeles and spending nights at gigs and clubs in London with a more nocturnal lifestyle, while her husband had to show up to his company office in the morning and take the kids to school as well. Jay Electronica would even post a photo of her on his Twitter, where she was accompanying him on a helicopter ride to a Kanye West and Jay-Z show. Her husband had gotten increasingly suspicious of the amount of time she was spending with Jay Electronica, and in late May of 2012, He confronted her at their home after finding incriminating and explicit text messages and emails on her phone. She confessed to the affair with Jay Electronica, and it's alleged that her husband smacked her and kicked a toy, to which police were called early that morning. Ben is heartbroken, devastated, and thoroughly miserable. He suspected Kate was cheating on him because she's been behaving increasingly erratically for some time. She's obsessed with this chap called Jay Electronica, who's one of her clients. She's always on the phone to him and out with him until 4 or 5 in the morning most nights. Sometimes she even stays with him. Ben was paranoid about their friendship months ago, but when he confronted her about an affair earlier this year, she denied it. Then last week he found a series of texts and email messages. They were very intense messages planning sexual liaisons. This turned public quickly, since they were a public relationship and marriage in England, and Kate began getting a lot of hate, so she hopped on Twitter to say her piece. I have been with my husband since I was 17 years old. My whole life from then until now has been dedicated to him and our children. Our marriage went bad a few years ago, and none of you have any idea what I went through along with my husband. Then we separated for a while. Anger and bitterness following that time led to a very one-sided story being deliberately released in order to shame and hurt me. I love my husband. He's a brilliant and incredible man. We grew up together, and I miss him painfully, but relationships go wrong, and ours did. As for Jay Electronica, who I managed and have done for a while, he saved my life in many ways, and I'm eternally grateful to him and hope that I can repay him by helping him, as his manager and friend, to become what he's destined to be. Kate would post a photo on Instagram of her children coming off a plane, and one of the likes would be Jay Electronica. This was a billion-dollar-plus family who had their marriage broken apart because the wife wanted to have an affair with an American rapper. Jay Electronica didn't seem too happy with how the press was painting Kate, despite her being the adulterer, and came at Ben Goldsmith on Twitter, saying, @BJ Goldsmith, Ben, you need to stop going to the press with these BS stories. Don't be a effing hypocrite. I'll come see you. You want to go public, I'll go public, and you ain't gonna like it. Stop acting like a bitch. Throughout 2013, they continued to be seen alongside each other in a public relationship where her style changed a lot. It looked like she had completely transformed to the LA music industry disheveled look with cigarette smoke alongside it. People close to her put out a statement saying, "To be quite frank, I was shocked when I saw the pictures. One tries not to jump to conclusions, but when she goes out looking like that is terribly worrying." The past 18 months have been particularly difficult for Kate. Everyone had been hoping that things would settle down, but she's increasingly out of reach. Fundamentally, she's a wonderful girl with a sensible head on her shoulders. She's also a great mom. But there's a wild, creative side which has a tendency to give everyone around her sleepless nights. From what I hear of the events the other day, they made quite a spectacle of themselves. What was she thinking? Their relationship, both business and personal, would continue when Kate was spotted in a picture at the Rock Nation building in New York City with Jay Electronica, which was quite surprising to most since Jay Electronica still had not yet released a project and wouldn't release an album for another 6 years. But their relationship would come to an end towards the end of 2014, when Kate's friends told the UK papers that they had not seen Jay Elec around her for months at the home that she would go see him after dropping her children off at school, and he was spending a lot more time in America. But several years later, in 2018, when Kate posted a picture with her new man, Derek Blasberg, where he calls her "my wife," Jay Electronica would comment with a quick post and delete saying, "Who wants their teeth knocked out first?" The eye emojis. There were also periscopes of Jay Electronica during this time being asked where the Rothschild chick is, and him replying, "That Rothschild chick is where I want her to be." This entire thing was shocking and interesting to many because of how shrouded in mystery Jay Electronica was within hip-hop. He was a member of the Nation of Islam, which isn't too fond of where the Rothschilds come from in their background. He would constantly rap about different conspiracy theories, and his personal life was largely kept offline. People hailed him as the second coming, the messiah to save hip-hop, eagerly awaiting his debut album while the years passed by. Then there's Kate Rothschild. How did she even come into contact with Jay Elec? What about Jay Elec made her so interested in pursuing a relationship with him that would ruin the public marriage she had with her husband and the kids she had with him alongside her family name? These are all questions that raise alarm in anyone's head. Was she an agent? Was Jay Elec sent by the NOI to infiltrate this quote-unquote Illuminati family? Did he want to peer behind the curtain? But unfortunately, we never got any answers. The only thing we did get was a Electronica album in 2020.